Labour Council sparks furious backlash after tearing down Union flags in UK city. Sir Keir Starmer sought to define the idea of patriotic renewal during a grilling on the BBC's Sunday with Laura Quensberg programme. A Labour-led council has ordered the removal of St George and Union Jack flags from public spaces in Derby, a decision that coincides with the party's annual conference in Liverpool, where patriotic renewal is a key theme. Derby City Council on Monday began taking down flags from bridges, walls, and lampposts, reported Good Morning Britain, a move that has already sparked significant backlash. Jonathan Swain, GMB's senior news correspondent, said, "In Derby, like many towns, cities and villages around the country, they have been proudly displaying, in their words, the St. George's Cross. Also the Union Jack is on the lampposts around the city, also on the roundabouts, on bridges and in people's homes." That started off as this grassroots campaign for people to feel pride in Britain and in England, but for some as well, it was also in response to what they're seeing of those boats, small boats, crossing the channel, of all that increase in numbers of illegal immigration. Well, today here in Derby, the flags, ironically, are being pulled down on a day where the government is talking about patriotic renewal. Mr. Swain's coverage also included a personal angle from Doncaster, where migrant businessman Darren Ahmed, who fled Iraq nearly 3 decades ago, shared his frustrations. Mr. Ahmed's chip shop was recently vandalized with England spray painted on its shutter, an act he found very hurtful. Despite this, he supports tighter immigration rules, saying, "If they have criminal records, I'm the first one to sign the registration because I have 3 kids here as well and I might have a fear like English people do for migrants who come over with criminal records." Mr. Swain's coverage also included a personal angle from Doncaster, where migrant businessman Darren Ahmed, who fled Iraq nearly 3 decades ago, shared his frustrations. Mr. Ahmed's chip shop was recently vandalized with England spray painted on its shutter, an act he found very hurtful. Despite this, he supports tighter immigration rules, saying, "If they have criminal records, I'm the first one to sign the registration because I have 3 kids here as well and I might have a fear like English people do for migrants who come over with criminal records." The council's decision is part of a broader trend, with other councils like York and Blackpool also removing flags due to safety concerns and community tensions. Earlier this month, Councillor Sarah Chambers justified Derby's move as a statutory responsibility to ensure public safety and prepare for seasonal events, though she noted the council had previously been flexible during Operation Raise the Colours. Ms. Chambers encouraged residents to retrieve their flags safely during the next week and approach local ward councillors for official flagpole installations. The council proudly flies the Union flag outside the council house and supports private flag flying. However, the decision has been met with strong opposition from local councillors. Councillor Tim Prosser, Reform Derby Group leader, argued that flag flying is misunderstood as a show of aggression or racial hate but simply as a token of national pride and frustration about our government. He warned that removing the flags would increase this frustration, a sentiment echoed by Conservative Group leader Councillor Steve Hassall, who criticized the council's priorities. He said, "This highlights how badly misplaced the council's priorities have become," Hassall said, noting residents' concerns about crime, antisocial behavior, and safety. Derby City Council has said it was time to bring the campaign of flag flying to an end, attributing the decision to a statutory responsibility to keep public spaces safe and well-maintained, and to prepare the area for seasonal and commemorative events. The authority encouraged those interested in installing official flagpoles to approach their local ward councillors, and it proudly flies the Union flag outside the council house, fully supporting private flag flying. A Derby City Council spokesperson said, "Derby City Council understands and shares the pride our residents feel in being British. We proudly fly the Union flag outside the council house every day, and we recognize both the Union flag and the flag of St. George as important symbols of our national identity. We fully support and welcome those who choose to fly these flags on their own property. We also encourage any residents interested in installing an official flagpole in their area to approach their local ward councillors to discuss the process and possibilities." In recent weeks we've seen the Union flag and the flag of St. George flown informally across the country. During this time, Derby City Council has taken the decision not to exercise our discretionary legal powers to remove flags or bunting that has been placed on street furniture, such as lampposts and bridges, unless they've been a health and safety hazard. It is important to note that many other councils across the UK have taken a similar stance. It is time to bring this campaign of flag flying to an end as we need to begin to clear our lampposts for future seasonal and commemorative events. The morning was meant to be one of quiet pride. Streets lined with small Union flags, fluttering against the crisp September breeze, were meant to set the tone for a weekend of community events. A charity fundraiser, a remembrance walk, and a veterans parade. But by midday, the bunting was gone. In its place were bare lampposts, a scattering of broken ties on the pavement, and the simmering anger of locals who felt their identity had been torn down along with the flags. It was the Labor-run council's decision that set everything alight. Officials cited planning regulations and concerns about public safety as the reason for the removal. They argued the flags were put up without proper permissions, that they obstructed sight lines, that they posed hazards to traffic and pedestrians. To their bureaucratic eyes, the red, white, and blue decorations were clutter. To residents, they were heritage, community, and pride. The backlash was immediate and ferocious. By afternoon, social media in the city was ablaze. Local Facebook groups became war zones of comments, with images of the stripped-down streets being shared thousands of times. "They've erased our pride," one resident wrote. Another added, "This isn't just about flags, this is about who we are and who gets to decide what that means." A crowd gathered spontaneously. People came carrying their own flags, some draped over their shoulders like cloaks, others waved aloft on sticks, defiant against the gray sky. Pensioners who remembered wartime rationing stood shoulder to shoulder with teenagers in football scarves, chanting in unison, "Our flag, our city." For labor councilors, what might have seemed a minor administrative enforcement had suddenly become a political earthquake. The symbolism of cloth. Why do strips of colored cloth matter so much? The Union flag is not just fabric. It carries centuries of history, stories of war and sacrifice, and an ongoing struggle over what it represents. For some, it's a symbol of unity, freedom, and resilience. For others, it carries baggage from Britain's colonial past, an emblem of an empire that left scars across the globe. But in this city, on this particular weekend, the flags have been put up by volunteers, veterans groups, scout leaders, small business owners who chipped in for bunting to bring color to the streets. It wasn't a government directive, it was grassroots pride. That's what made the removal sting so much. The people felt silenced, not by an outside power, but by their own local council. Voices from the street. John Henderson, a retired Royal Navy officer, was among the first to speak out. Standing on the steps of the town hall with his medals pinned to his jacket, he told reporters, "I buried friends under that flag. I served under it at sea. To see it torn down by our own council, it's heartbreaking. We didn't put them up to make a political point. We put them up to remember." Nearby, shopkeeper Aisha Khan expressed frustration of a different kind. "I don't always feel included in what the flag represents, if I'm honest. But my kids were excited to see the colors on the high street. It made the place feel festive, welcoming. Now it just feels bare." These testimonies reflected the complexity of the moment. It wasn't just outrage, it was disappointment, a feeling of being dismissed, of not being consulted. Council's defense. Facing mounting pressure, the Labor Council leader issued a short statement. "While we understand the importance of national pride, all decorations in public spaces must comply with planning and safety regulations. The flags were installed without proper authorization and posed potential risks. We remain committed to celebrating our community in inclusive and safe ways." But the damage was done. The language of authorization and safety sounded cold against the warmth of local emotion. To many, it reinforced the perception of politicians as detached, bureaucratic, and tone-deaf. Political tremors. National media quickly picked up the story, framing it as yet another skirmish in Britain's ongoing culture wars. Conservative MPs condemned the Labour Council, accusing them of being ashamed of Britain. Right-leaning tabloids ran front-page spreads with headlines like "Flag Fiasco" and "Red Council, Blue Rage." Labour HQ scrambled to distance itself, insisting this was a local matter. But the narrative stuck. Labour councils were against the flag, against tradition, against ordinary people. Within hours, activists were outside council offices waving giant Union Jacks, chanting slogans, and live-streaming the confrontation to thousands online. The opposition, sensing opportunity, began knocking on doors. "This isn't just about flags," one conservative campaigner told residents. "It's about respect. Do you feel respected by this council?" For many, the answer was a resounding no. A tale of two futures. The incident highlighted two visions of Britain pulling against each other. On one side, a council focused on regulation, procedure, and inclusivity, but appearing soulless, technocratic, and unwilling to bend for symbolism. On the other, a community clinging fiercely to symbols of national pride, sometimes uncritically, but with passion and heart. It also showed how fragile trust between politicians and people can be. A single act of removing flags spiraled into a crisis of legitimacy. What was intended as a routine enforcement became a lightning rod for grievances about identity, representation, and belonging. The aftermath. By Sunday, residents had replaced the missing bunting with their own makeshift flags. Some were hand-drawn, others stitched together from bedsheets. It was messy but heartfelt. Children painted red and blue stripes on their cheeks. Pensioners dusted off old flags from attics and hung them from balconies. It was no longer just about decoration. It had become an act of defiance. The council, faced with relentless criticism, hinted at compromise. A special meeting was called to discuss community consultation on future displays. But the trust gap was wide. Many residents felt it wasn't just about consultation anymore. It was about principle. For local people, the message was clear. Our identity cannot be managed away by a form or a policy. Conclusion. The tearing down of Union flags in this UK city will likely be remembered not as a minor bureaucratic decision, but as a defining cultural flashpoint. It revealed the deep emotional currents tied to national symbols, the volatility of local politics, and the ease with which small acts can ignite big fires. Perhaps most importantly, it showed that for many, pride cannot be regulated, and belonging cannot be red-taped. A flag may be just cloth to some, but to others, it's the very fabric of community.